Hello and welcome to a brand new 2 Tokens podcast. And today we're going to talk about tagging energy. These podcasts are part of the energy tokenization roundtable sessions, which are being hosted today at the Green Village of Delft. And it's basically an event in which experts, thought leaders, enthusiasts, startups, all kind of people involved in the energy transition and tokenization are discussing these topics today and creating the path of the future for energy tokenization. Well, in today's podcast, I'm talking with Leon Gerard Vandenberg. It sounds like a Dutch name, but you're
Very
not Dutch.
Dutch by DNA.
Yeah. So you're the CEO of Sunified, and on the other hand, I've got Killian Daly, General Manager of the EnergyTag Foundation. Welcome to the group.
Thanks for having me.
You've been already some sort of friend, or no, not some sort of. You're already a friend of the podcast, right? You've been here a few times.
Yeah, I've been here a few times with Jos and also with 2 Tokens with Riddle and Code as well.
Yeah, so, I mean, I know you obviously already quite well, but
we're co-located a little bit with Catena as well.
Yeah,
so you
exactly.
understand.
Yeah, so
good.
It's. But first, I mean, you're a new face to me, Killian. So welcome. Would you like to tell us a bit more about yourself? What it is you do with the EnergyTag Foundation and.
Sure. So I'm Killian. I'm the general manager at EnergyTag, and to a bit about myself, I'm Irish, and I've been involved in the energy space since the beginning of my career, since my education. Indeed, it's just been something that has kind of possessed me, I suppose. So before joining EnergyTag, I worked for a company called Air Liquide, which is a French industrial gas company.
You see it a lot in the southern part of the Netherlands.
It's one of the biggest companies no one has ever heard of, but it's kind of everywhere. I was buying electricity there, and I was, actually looking at how do we go about decarbonizing this electricity? How do we improve our carbon accounting? And I just started to see some pretty fundamental flaws in that. When companies claim they're 100% renewable, it's misleading. It's not exactly what the consumer thinks. And a zero carbon account is not exactly what the world needs today. So EnergyTag, basically what we're working on is transforming how we tag energy. So consumers really know exactly where their energy came from on an hourly basis. And this will allow things, like 24/7 tracking of electricity. And when we say, hopefully one day in the future, when a company says, I am zero emissions, this truly means that they're zero emissions every hour of the year on their local grid. And that's kind of our vision for the future. And we're working with folks like Leon and many, many others around the world to kind of make this happen. UN Energy is a big supporter of ours, Google, Microsoft. We work a lot with the EPA, the European Commission, who I was talking to this morning about this topic. So we try to drive this whole ecosystem forward and help folks, make it happen.
Yeah, it's such an important topic, which we will discuss in a few moments as well. For the viewers who haven't seen you earlier, Leon, would you quickly introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, so Sunified is a company that we created in Australia. We came up with a way of digitizing solar panels by putting a sensor, a Bluetooth sensor and a SIM sensor in the junction box of solar panels. We too want to tag and trace the energy coming from a solar panel. And we think that the solar industry, renewables industry has a reporting and opaque kind of aggregation problem. People say that they can disaggregate information that is flowing from all these energy networks. And we think that there's some foundational truths that are missing. These truths, basically, we want to start to propagate from the solar industry and then bring our technology stack from the solar industry into more renewables and into the smart grid. So we started the most simple engineering use case, how to digitize solar panels, a DC voltage coming off a solar panel, and then to aggregate that information using a gateway. And this is part of what we do to, I guess, provide a checksum or a proof point. What has happened on the DC side of a solar network? It could be a commercial industrial, but we're starting first with utility scale solar. So there's really 2 parts of Sunified. We have a tech stack and a sensor topology. And then we also are building our own solar parks in Australia to kind of eat our own dog food. Because the only way to do this is to get your hands dirty. And I'm sick of think tanks. We're more into a do tank kind of mode. And that's why I find this exciting with 2 Tokens. It's about the practical application of this, what can happen this month, this quarter, this next half year. And that's what we're actually finding here, is that we found our product market fit for the sensor and the tech stack, and now we're getting scale capital to make this possible. And so we're really a data oracle that runs on top of solar and renewables. Yeah. And then we let anyone with a blockchain idea or a solar digitization idea to use our data sets and then provide this utility for the life cycle of the asset. We want to track the asset from the factory to the paddock where it's installed, right through to its being eventually decommissioned and then recycled. So supply chain continuity and trust around supply chain, especially in the solar industry, with China having such a supply chain power, and the misuse of some of that power as well in the channel. There are some great actors in the solar industry, but then there's people selling substandard panels, and we also find that people get caught with warranties that don't really perform. So we're trying to provide, I guess, 5 benefits on top of solar, and EnergyTag is one very important part of that. And while Killian talked about hourly proofs of solar, we're doing 30-second witness proofs and then doing 5-minute reports. So we've immediately taken that frame, that criteria for EnergyTag, and gone, well, we can go one deeper, right? Really provide packetized energy 30 seconds at a time. And that's what Sunified does.
Yeah, great. Hey, before we move on, I first want to ask the viewers, if you haven't subscribed yet, please feel free to subscribe to this channel and also give this video a like if you haven't done so before. And also don't forget to hit the bell button so you're always the first to learn about all these new podcasts, because there's so many exciting topics that will be hosted on this channel regarding tokenization, and today then energy tokenization. Killian, back to you, because I mean, Leon is already going straight away with all the benefits that he gets from basically the crypto anchored and the unified or the Sunified chip that he created. But the energy, the tagging of energy, you already mentioned a few very important topics. It immediately comes to my mind the greenwashing that is being fought back against with the EnergyTag Foundation. Can you explain basically to the people in clear terms what it is exactly that you're doing and why it is so important that we start to do this? Have this EnergyTag Foundation? Sure.
So I think to take a step back before we can explain some of the transparency issues with certification today, I think it's important just to realize that, first of all, on a grid with a lot of different production, the electrons are electrons. We can't tell the color of them. So we need a traceability mechanism above the grid, like an accounting system that basically says who put green energy in, and then who is allowed to buy that claim and then make that claim to take it back out and say, I'm green. The way that is done today is basically using annual accounting methodologies. And obviously with an electricity grid that needs to be balanced absolutely instantaneously, having annual accounting for a real-time system, it obviously leads to a number of issues. One way of describing it is that actually today, because we don't know ever the time on one of these energy certificates or energy attribute certificates, what we call them around the world, there's no timestamp ever. So we never know exactly when that energy was produced, meaning that at 3 o'clock in the morning, I can claim that I consumed solar energy produced during the daytime, without having stored that energy. And obviously it's misleading. Basically, it's not giving consumers the full picture. And this is happening wholesale. And it's a big issue. So like the major issue we see is moving from annual accounting and bringing that accounting much closer to the physical realities of the grid. We call it hourly accounting. So that, if I want to say I'm green at 3 a.m., fine, I can do it from solar as long as I've stored that energy in a battery, for example, from the daytime. Then that's what the system needs, and that should be allowed. And of course, we could go to much smaller timescales, as mentioned by Leon. We use hourly as a kind of a proxy because already going from a year to an hour, I think it's a great first step, right? But obviously, it should actually go to the market settlement period. So in Australia, that should be 5 minutes, and that's fantastic. And then further down in time, right?
Well, battery arbitrage, right, is done in sub-second kind of mechanisms as well. So we can't really perform on that. That's not our design brief right now, but 5 minutes is really doable. And we think that, 3 seconds to 5 seconds will be possible as well. So we really think it's compelling, the offer that EnergyTag does. And plus they're thinking digital native, right? Like the real thesis of EnergyTag is create this digital ecosystem, whereas I see a lot of these reporting certificates and inventories of credits that have been used and mistreated, right? To say, okay, I'm going to backwash all of my carbon footprint, with rainforest credits based on energy carbon footprint. So we think that there's a mismatch, a misuse of these credits as well.
And I think a lot of it, just to maybe bounce in on that, but like a lot of it actually comes from the fact that, these certification systems, like a guarantee of origin in Europe, which is, basically tracks now over 25% of the EU's electricity. So these are, very large systems, right? Like everyone who has a green tariff at home, my parents in Ireland, it's guarantees of origin that are being, basically used to make that claim to consumers. That was set up over 20 years ago. I think having it on an annual basis wasn't necessarily bad back then. They didn't have the data to do something more granular. And to have the mechanism in place in the first place is absolutely essential, because otherwise there's no choice for consumers, which I think is the worst of all worlds. So we have to realize that the system itself it's not a problem in and of itself. It's more, I think at this point now where we move towards the question of how do we totally decarbonize grids, it's just not fit for purpose anymore. It probably was 20 years ago to get things kickstarted when there was low renewable penetrations. Yeah. So we have to be, careful of that as well. But now, like everything in the world, right, we need to innovate and we need to move forward. And that's what EnergyTag is really about.
I think it's really the lack of transparency is also really hurting the energy transition energy transition in a way that, for example, we've done a green bond, and the first kind of criticism that I got is, everybody's just greenwashing it. How can you prove it's really a green bond? And we could prove it because we could show that the assets were green. We've got solar assets, and we could show, but still, I mean, we lack a way of proving it decentralized, and that's a way where you come in with Sunified. But the importance of energy tagging is, in my opinion, it's very straightforward. I'm just curious to learn from your perspective, how are you going to do it? Like how is this working? Like energy tagging?
Sure. So EnergyTag, first of all, we're bringing together all of the folks working on this, and we're basically what we did was propose the first global standard for energy tagging at an hourly level, and we published that in April.
April this year.
Yeah, just April this year,
wow.
Right? So that has the support of, I think, about over 120 organizations around the world who are actually working on this. So we're coordinating all of that, right? Like all the folks actually going out and doing this in the real world. And basically how it works, it's this, let's call it a digital twin of the electricity system that is always knowing this unit, this wind turbine, between 1 and 2 o'clock on a Tuesday in January produced this amount of energy. That goes onto the ledger as a production, and that becomes a type of certificate or energy credit. And that can then be purchased by consumers who want to make a claim of consumption within that same hourly period. And it's just an accounting system at the end of the day, right? There's nothing
that
too
asset is
scary.
then retired and taken out of inventory.
Exactly.
Right? So, yeah.
Exactly, to ensure that there's no double counting, which is, obviously, if there's an asset, let's say a wind turbine that is generating one certificate for customer A and another one on another system for customer B, and then another one for customer C on a third system, that's, triple counting of electricity, and it's fraudulent and it can't be allowed. So the fundamental basis of all of these tracking systems, number one rule is never double count. Never give a consumer one bit of energy and then allow another claim the same unit of energy underlying. So
it's also providing the resolution of the asset register as well, right? So that can't be cheated. So in Australia, for consumer-based solar panels, those credits are given up front when you install a solar panel on your roof. Those are called STCs. And those are really deemed credits on the capacity of the solar panel, let's say a 400-watt panel. And they say, okay, we're going to bring forward those carbon credits for 25 years, and now you get that as a benefit for installing now. Whereas large-scale projects, those are called LGCs, and they're paid out every 30 to 90 days. So there's really different time horizons and resolution of those things. Yeah. The consumer solar panels are based on this nameplate capacity of the solar panel, where there's kind of a loose accounting on that as well, because who knows what that panel is actually going to provide over its 25-year lifetime. They really have brought that accounting period forward, right? Like a discounted cash flow, right? And they say, this is the assumption. There's also problems where people have double installed fake panels and got the credits and then, Phoenix, the company, and ran away with the carbon credits as well, or not paid a proper VAT tax on credits as well. So there's a chance for fraud in the industry that we see, that we need to tighten and provide this continuity of the asset register. And then what happens with that asset when it's deployed in the field, and what is the resolution that then you can point to behind the meter and then at the meter. So it's really providing that resolution. And again, we call it the Oracle problem. In blockchains, if you have garbage in, a blockchain doesn't help you to solve garbage out, right?
It just accelerates it.
It just accelerates it. Yeah, exactly.
So we're trying to be this kind of data fidelity on top of solar. We're starting with solar, but then when you get into the AC side of the industry, AC networks run on 3-phase power. Those are cosine waves and sine waves, three times over the network, and those things are phase locked with atomic clocks. So everything has to happen, with that kind of atomic clock resolution. That's actually the time synchronicity of this industry. So there is when we start to deal with the AC side of the network, where everything is accounted for, then it really starts to get into some very fine resolution. And the engineering problem for providing that telemetry is a really complex problem. We're trying to provide that abstract layer, like EnergyTag, for providing those proofs, that trust layer as well as an economic layer.
But so, from my understanding, you need to be a member of EnergyTag Foundation in order to prove on an hourly basis that your energy is green, for example. So you mentioned that you already got partners like Google, and you mentioned a few others.
Microsoft, Iberdrola, a lot of the big utilities.
So do you need to be a member in order to be able to prove that, and also you need, as a power producer, be a member of EnergyTag Foundation, or how does it exactly work? Because I'm also curious to learn like how you then tag it, because are you already using blockchain or...
So basically, just to maybe explain how EnergyTag actually works. First of all, it's an open door policy. Anyone can sign up. There's no fee. It's an open mailing list. You can join any of our working groups. And we think that's really important, to bring everyone on board and not to have barrier to entry. However, if you want to actually claim that I'm issuing an hourly energy certificate in compliance with EnergyTag standard, then you would have to go through like basically a protocol assessment or checking process to make sure that you're actually doing what you say you do. And this is as a producer. As a producer, yes, as a producer, exactly. We're starting auditing in actually next month. The standard was released about 6 months back. And we think it's a really important part of building trust to make sure that folks are kind of, at least at the most fundamental level, not double counting, actually issuing certificates that are a 60-minute basis or less. If we can't prove to ourselves that we're actually starting to harmonize and do things in a proper way, we're going to have a lot of trouble proving to other people, to the consumer, to governments, that what we're doing is actually trustworthy. Because as you said, I think it was a really interesting point earlier, and it's kind of the crux of it all. In a way, what we're doing, it's where the consumer comes in contact with the energy transition, where they can actually make that choice at home to buy green energy. And if that is not transparent, if that's flawed, if that's misleading them,
if it's just marketing,
then they're going to say, this is yet again more greenwashing, and then they'll just maybe have a fundamental turn against the energy transition itself, which I think would be disastrous. So just to be clear, like EnergyTag is a very open organization in terms of anyone can join, anyone can sign on to our calls and contribute. Anyone can write to me and say they like this, they don't like that. But then obviously if you want to make a claim saying, yes, we're aligned with this standard, then we do basically a type of an audit to check that your systems are actually doing what they say they do.
But also then you can't, for example, sell GVOs or guarantees of origin, GOOs in English, towards another entity, for example, because there are multiple entities trading those certificates. If you do it, for example, with EnergyTag Foundation, you can only then sell it, or you're not really selling it or using it via EnergyTag Foundation? Or how do you account for those?
So tell us the work case that CertiQ is doing then.
Exactly. Exactly. I was just going to come to this. So, like, obviously, first of all, the chairman of EnergyTag is a guy called Phil Moody, who set up the Guarantee of Origin system about 20 years ago, and then he basically ran and administered that as part of the thing called the Association of Issuing Bodies, which is all of the European issuing bodies for guarantees of origin. He ran that for 20 years, and he's come to EnergyTag since he left the AIB, right? CertiQ, which is the issuing body here in the Netherlands for Guarantee of Origin, they're, one of the most innovative and pushy of all of the issuing bodies in Europe, and they've been working on a project here in the Netherlands, along with Google, Microsoft, and a company called FlexiDAO, who are doing the hourly tracking part, because actually the Guarantee of Origin is the only legal way in Europe that you can sell or claim green electricity. So that's the legal system. However, the legal system is not time-stamped, and it has a megawatt hour certificate. So it's basically by design, it's by design a bit out of date, right? So what EnergyTag does, we in our standard have a lot of work and thought got into this, is how you take a Guarantee of Origin and basically cut it up in time. Yeah. You can split it up in time into granular energy certificates, but always making sure that the Guarantee of Origin is linked to those granular certificates that are issued, because we don't want guarantees of origin going to Google and granular certificates going to Microsoft from the same unit of energy. That's double counting, and that would be fraudulent, basically.
So FlexiDAO have a great platform. They're tokenizing it with their platform. So they've also worked with Energy Web and other ecosystems. So they've really championed this process. Well, FlexiDAO aren't working with two tokens. We still can leverage their learning, and this is an open API and documentation experience with EnergyTag as well. So we're trying to provide this harmonization across the ecosystem, and there'll be horses for courses as far as we're concerned, where this will work for industry, where it will work for commercial industrial, where it will work for large scale generators, and then for eventually consumers, right? If I want to be a consumer and download an app and manage my daily carbon footprint, there'll be apps for that as well. And we want to have those granular certificates. You couldn't really do that at a megawatt certificate, right? We need to deal with kilowatts and watts, right? So when we start to say, well, what's the resolution of that, and how can you make sure local for local, right? I want to buy the green energy certificate from this local solar park on the Green Village car park. Right? If I'm a student here, that's where I want to contribute my activities. So that local for local discussion, which will be another kind of working table here at the round tables, is really important, because if you always have to go to a centralized authority to adjudicate everything, yes, we understand the logic of a regulatory carbon market. The consumption doesn't have to always be from a centralized inventory. It could be from a decentralized inventory as well. So we want to provide that capability. So certainly CertiQ are the adjudicator of all of this in the Netherlands, but there's other marketplaces that will allow decentralized inventory of carbon credits.
Yeah, so basically, I mean, the EnergyTag Foundation is building upon the GVO, the GOO framework, and then creating that granular, how do you call it?
Very much granular certificates, we call them.
That, I think it's becoming a new term, right?
I hope so. Everyone sign up straight away. So we're obviously, taking all the good parts of the Guarantee of Origin and adding, correcting some of the fundamental flaws of the Guarantee of Origin.
Yeah, because basically to me it sounds like it's just basically inherent being designed for big, just on a very high level of seeing, okay, that's, we measured on a yearly basis and with megawatt hours, so like very large, basically data pieces. And then it's totally not coherent for smaller users, and just basically what you're tying is you already mentioned is being built like 20 years ago already, and it's time for
time for an
update.
Definitely time for an update. I think we're really clear on that, and we hope that would eventually follow back through to European legislation, which hopefully will change and allow for these more granular certificates that open up these smaller markets.
But we're also trying to harmonize across North America, Asia Pac, Australia. So there are other customers in Australia and other platform providers. So NOC is a platform provider in Australia that's working with the University of Sydney on an EnergyTag demo.
Yeah.
Sunified is working with IBM with their Hyperledger database to make a demo for EnergyTag for IBM and their platforms. So IBM is really facing not consumers, but more the industry, right, for orchestration of energy and for doing that.
Yeah.
And perhaps you could have an energy credit, based on EV charging. So if you would change someone's behavior to charge EV with green energy, then they're actually creating a negawatt, right? The energy that they did not consume in the evening, that was brown energy. There's all sorts of ways that new layers and new incentives for green energy consumption can be orchestrated and formulated. So we're unbundling this capital stack of green energy credits, and we're providing a brand new way to do it digitally. So it's all what the founder of Netscape said, right? The advantage is to unbundle and rebundle, right? It's providing these new framing for facing a customer and giving that truth and confidence that something real happened when I bought this certificate.
And I think that's one of the, you touched on something really interesting there with EVs. And I to give another example from a topic I've spent a lot of my last 5 years working on is hydrogen. So I used to work for one of Europe's largest hydrogen producers. So we all, I'm sure a lot of people with any form of interest in energy have heard about green hydrogen. And this kind of is one of my pet peeves. Green hydrogen is only green if the electricity going into the electrolyzer is green. Okay, this is really, really fundamental point. But people almost wholesale say if it's coming from electricity, then it's green. It's not. And actually, there's a really interesting study about to come out from the US on this topic. And there's been studies as well from the Florence School of Regulation here in Europe. It's a very hot regulatory topic at the moment. And it's absolutely crucial that when we talk about green hydrogen, it has to be green electricity locally produced and every hour. Otherwise, what we will do is build, and the EU targets would require a whole France 500 terawatt hours more electricity to be put onto the system just for hydrogen production. And if we run those electrolyzers all the time, including during those hours of very high gas penetration, it's actually in almost all cases going to be worse than grey hydrogen. So green hydrogen could have more emissions than grey hydrogen if we don't use granular certification, if we don't use hourly tracking. So the consequences of this actually can be massive at a system level.
So we see green electrons becoming green molecules, and you can't swap this or commingle it in the downtime when you don't have solar and you don't have wind. So Australia is a great location where they're actually building these huge ammonia hydrogen complexes. So 27 gigawatts CWP renewables in the Pilbara in Western Australia are doing this, but they've not looked at green certification. They've only now started to look at this. We're in front of some of the decision makers on how to do the accounting for this. But of course, their customers are green steel producers that want to buy green ammonia from Australia and ship it to Japan for smelting green steel. So they want to make sure the ingredients are sound. We have continuity of that asset class. We call it our treasury. The electrons become our treasury, and we really provide that finality, just like a pay wave card. Every 30 seconds, that's the kind of transaction proof that this is green energy. They all aggregate. Blockchain math is pretty perfect, but of course there's losses behind the network on all that. So there's an accounting principle called demurrage. When you have losses behind the DC side of the network going through the inverters, we can calculate all that and run a machine learning algorithm to tune that and make sure that the system is in balance. We know what's happening, and the checksum is really the smart meter boundary. So we can provide all those proof points along the way and give great confidence that those electrons, the ingredients, the green hydrogen, are sound and that the proof points are there, right? That they're actually buying the right stuff.
And it's so good to hear that, and it's absolutely crucial, because if we don't get this right, we're going to be calling green hydrogen something that's actually worse than today. Really just do nothing if you're not making sure it's really, really green. And these are the consequences of, and I think the importance of, well, I would like to think that's why we're in this field, right? Of what we're doing. It's to make sure that green products in the future really mean decarbonization?
So it's the provenance of green energy. So we're tracking that provenance, and we really don't just see this as EnergyTag metadata, but we're bringing in other attributes. So the specific granular certificate that we're looking at is the time-based energy attribute certificate. So to get into the word kind of acronyms, right? Those time-based energy attribute certificates roll up into aggregate proofs that then become this inventory that can be used downstream.
Of course, yeah.
And that's where we want to see corporate off-takers use that. And they use that based on time and geography. So they can't use a time-based energy certificate sometime, let's say, out of a 6-hour band or out of a 3-hour band. I'm not sure what the criteria is for that. And there's working groups that we have for that.
If you're going to be using, it's going to be, well, in terms of the time band, it has to be 60 minutes or less, and ideally, whatever, 5 minutes, right? Like, or even less, right?
Yeah.
Because, and I think that point about provenance is key, because at the end of the day, if we have a basic commodity product like hydrogen that is eventually going to go into something like green steel, if I've burned coal, and then use some dodgy accounting or some tricky accounting to produce green hydrogen, then what I'm calling green steel is actually an environmental disaster. Yeah. So like it's all along the chain, right from the very first point to the point where that steel is used in that bridge. We need to make sure that it's really green.
So we call that the kind of custody trust, right? What's your custody of that asset from cradle to grave? Eventually,
cradle to grave,
or cradle to cradle.
That is the same. No, but it's so important.
No, but gentlemen, I mean, I can already hear we only have half an hour. We already passed that half an hour so quickly. And I think what's the most important point that we just touched upon is the importance of transparency that we're creating in this market. And the EnergyTag Foundation is setting a standard for that. And the product that you've created with Sunified is basically creating a layer of trust on the machine level. And it's not only creating a layer of trust for the GOOs, but also for any other sorts of data on a much higher frequency. So you can already see how these various levels of the ecosystem come together. And also for the viewers at home, we just had a podcast recorded about orchestrating the energy transition. Within that podcast, we already discussed how basically companies and we call it energy leaders take the first step in creating this level of transparency that we need. And then you already mentioned how you hope that legislators will take over and take these developments and innovations as a basis for new laws, because we really need new laws. So if you haven't seen the other podcast orchestrating the energy transition, please do have a look at that podcast as well, as this very much complements that what we've seen over there. Leon, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks,
I mean,
David.
I'm very sure we could talk for many more hours, but I'm sure we'll have hours.
We're trying to make this happen in physical reality. So we're here in the Green Village, right? We're at TU Delft. Port of Rotterdam is also where we have our field trial. So we want to expose these APIs and get EnergyTag operating here at the Green Village.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to happen sometime. And also, Killian, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
To everybody, thank you very much for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please don't forget to subscribe. Also, don't forget to give this video a like if you really liked it. And also, don't forget to hit the bell button so you're always the first to know about these new podcasts. And I'm sure
tag
many more will come.
on Twitter.
Tag us everywhere.
We're going to tag everyone.
Tag those electrons.
Hey, both of you, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It was really fun. Thank you.
That was it for today's podcast. Thank you for listening in, and please subscribe so you don't miss out on our upcoming episodes. If you want to get in touch with us, you can find our contact details at www.twotokens.org.